to another episode of In the Kitchen with Baker Girl. Thank you, Jesus. It is another beautiful day to be in the kitchen. Now today I'm really excited because we will be making a 3-ingredient fresh strawberry jam. And we will be canning this jam in our water bath canner. Now, I'll show you also a way how we can just put it in the jars and keep it in the refrigerator if you don't want to water bath can it. So there's 2 ways that you can do it, and I'll show you both methods today. Now, as I said earlier in my previous videos, we will be doing a series on preserving and how if you want to can or if you don't want to can certain foods, but you still want to preserve certain foods, we'll be focusing on those sort of videos in this preserving season that I'm doing. So if you want to see more videos on preserving, whether we're canning or we're not canning, then be sure to subscribe to my channel. That way you won't miss any video that I upload. Now, as I said, this jam is just a 3-ingredient strawberry jam. You need strawberries, you need fresh lemons, and you need some sugar. For the jam, those are all the ingredients. Now, your strawberries, you want to have a mixture of some really ripe berries, and then you want to have a mixture of some underripe berries. Now, this may not look like, oh, that I don't want that look. No, you actually do, because the underripe berries have more pectin in them than the very ripe berries, and that helps your jam to set up. And since we're not adding any pectin in our jam, as you would normally get the pectin packets, we're not going to use that today. So you do want those underripe berries, and they actually have more flavor than the ripe berries, which are just more sweet. And also to help our jam set up, and also to give it that nice, bright, fresh flavor, we'll be using some fresh lemon juice and just some regular granulated sugar. And you can adjust the sugar to however you want. If you want to use a little more, you want to use a little less, you can adjust the sugar. So those are the ingredients that we need, the 3 ingredients for our jam. Now, let's talk equipment. And for the equipment to make jam, you only need a few basic things. You need a pot, a stainless steel pot, because we will be working with some acid, the lemon juice. So you need a good stainless steel pot. You will need a potato masher. This kind of helps to speed your jam along a little bit, because you don't have to chop the berries, although you can. I won't. And the potato masher, you can just crush them up, and that goes a little faster. So you'll need a potato masher. You'll need a large spoon. You will need a ladle, a good stainless steel heat-proof ladle where you can ladle your jam into your jars. And you'll also need a funnel for your jars. And these are just standard canning equipment that if you do any canning, you already have all of these things. This is a jar wand, and you use it to stir and make sure all your ingredients are settled in your jar. And you'll need a jar lifter, because we will be water bath canning this jam, and you'll need some kind of way of getting your jars in and out, So this works just like this. You lift it, because of course the jam will be hot, so you would lift it and then you would put it into your jar. And when your processing time is up, you use this to lift your jars out of your water bath canner. So a jar lifter is handy. And of course you'll need some jars. We're using 8-ounce jam jars, and you will need the required lids for your jars. And if you buy a pack of jars, they usually come in a pack of 12, they will already have the lids attached. And you do want to make sure all your equipment is washed, it's sanitized, it's sterilized, it's clean, and it's ready for canning, because that is an important thing. If in doubt, always have a pot of hot water simmering on the stove, where you can always drop your things inside and sanitize them for, just a quick minute or so to make sure there's nothing running around in here. But due to the high acid content in this jam and the high sugar content, you don't have to worry about anything because fruits are high acid, but you still want to make sure everything is good and clean. So that is a tip. And you'll need jars, as I said earlier. Now, I have my jars heating in my water bath canner. Wash them thoroughly, rinse them out, fill them up with water, put them on the stove, put them in a large stock pot, cover them with water, just plain cold water. Put it on the stove. When it comes up to a boil, you let your jars simmer for about 10-15 minutes just to make sure they are thoroughly sanitized. And then you can just turn the stove off and let your jars sit in that hot water until you're ready to go. You always want to put hot ingredients into hot jars. If you put cold ingredients into hot jars, or if you put hot ingredients into cold jars, and then you lower that cooled jar into that hot water, your jar could crack. But I'll talk about that as we go along. But you do want to keep that in mind. Hot goes with hot. So we've got hot, we will have hot jam, we'll have hot jars coming out of hot water. So always keep that in mind. So let's get to making our jam. Now, the first thing I do want to do is remove the tops from my strawberries. And you want to do that, there's no need to, you don't have to core and do all that. Just take a paring knife and just snip with a little V and remove the top from all your berries. And don't throw away your strawberry tops. You knew I was going to say it. Don't throw away those strawberry tops. No, I'm actually putting them into a bowl, and I'm just going to add these to some tea. Here in Virginia, where I am, strawberry season is in May. Now, if you don't have access to fresh strawberries, or if you don't have time during strawberry season, you know, when they're in season, if you don't have time, wash your berries, remove the tops, put them on a sheet tray, and lay your berries out on an even layer on a sheet tray, put it in the freezer, let them freeze, and then all you would need to do is just take your frozen berries, tip them into a Ziploc bag, remove the air, date them, and then put them in the freezer. And you can make your jam from frozen berries as equally well, and it's not, you know, very much different than using fresh berries. So I'm going to continue removing my strawberry tops and get ready to put them in the pot. All right, I've got all my berries hulled, got the tops removed, and I'm just ready to put them into my canning. Now it's time for the lemon juice. Now, whether or not you want to add a few strips of lemon zest to your strawberry jam is entirely up to you. I do. And you don't have to. It just adds a little bit more fresh lemon flavor. So I'm just going to remove a few strips of my lemon zest. Okay. Now time to juice the lemons. The lemon juice helps the jam to set, because lemons are very high in pectin themselves, and they help the jam to set. And also, you know how you get something that's very, very sweet but doesn't have a whole lot of other flavor running around? The lemon juice helps to balance out all the sweetness from the jam. That aside, and wipe off my countertop, because yeah, those lemons, they do splash. Okay, there we are. See? We're going red. We're going all red today if we can help it. Okay, so how much juice did we get? We got a half a cup of juice. That's good. So if you have a few minutes before you're ready to jump right into jam making, it's always a good idea if you can, and I'm going to go ahead and throw my lemon peels in here before I forget. If you can let your berries and your sugar sit for a little while, say 10-15 minutes. It will help, the sugar will draw the moisture out of the berries. So if you can let them sit for a little while, and as I always say, you don't always have to add all the sugar. You can let some of your sugar hang out for a little bit, and then you can taste your jam and see if you want to add a little bit more sugar to it. Since we're not wanting this jam to be a very thick jam, I don't anyway. If you want a thicker jam, you would use all the sugar and then you would just let it reduce down a little bit. But I like a little looseness in my jam, and I don't like it very sweet. So I'm just going to hold off a little bit on the sugar for myself. But you can go ahead and add it all in there if you know you like really sweet jams. So I'm going to let these sit for 15 minutes and come back, and we'll be ready for the next step. So now we're going to head over to the stove. We're going to get to making our jam. And by the way, I do want to say I have 2 freezer-safe saucers in the freezer. That's for testing the temperature of our jam. And also I'm going to use a thermometer because you want to know it's come up to the correct temperature that it will set. So there are 2 ways you can use the thermometer, or you can use the saucers. If you choose to use the saucers, do what I did and go ahead and put the saucers in the freezer before you start working on your jam, because you need a cold saucer to help test the set, as they call it, of your jam. So don't forget to put those sauces in the freezer. I'll meet you over by the stove. Okay, y'all, so we are here by the stove, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn my heat on. We are working on about, a medium to medium high heat. And I do want to grab a spatula for stirring my jam. Spatulas sometimes work better than a spoon, and you do want to obviously use a heat-proof spatula. So just going to go ahead and start giving it a stir. And the first step for this, you're really just dissolving the sugar. Another thing you can add in your jam, which I really do like to add, you can add a vanilla bean pod into your jam. So you would just split your vanilla bean pod, open it up, and then just drop it down in there. And if you wanted to add, if you have some vanilla sugar, like I have a pot of vanilla sugar, you can add some of that into here. Keep in mind, though, that the vanilla sugar won't have a strong vanilla flavor as if you added the vanilla pod. Okay. So you can see here, it's just been a few minutes, and we already got a lot of liquid in here. And this is typical with fresh, especially if you're using the berries that's picked from a farm. Say then, like berries you get from the grocery store. Berries you get from the grocery store can sometimes not be the juiciest berries. But now if you pick them from a farm, they will have a lot of water in them. And you'll need to adjust your recipe accordingly. Or you need to adjust your cooking of your berries accordingly, because they will have a lot more water. As you can see, these have a lot more water. And one thing about making jam, you'll find, especially when it really, really starts to get down into the gelling stage, is what it's called, because it goes through stages. It's called the sheeting stage and then the gelling stage. And all of those you would test simply by the drops that runs off of your spoon or your spatula. And you see right now, it's just started cooking, so everything is very runny. Now it's time for the potato masher. And just be very careful, because this is hot. So if you feel more comfortable, you can put an oven mitt on. If you're not so comfortable about having your hand over a boiling pot of berries, which I can totally understand. Now I'm going to start taking the temperature of my jam, so I'm just going to stick my thermometer in. And we do want to come up to 200 degrees, 220 degrees to be exact. And we are at around 100 and almost at 190 degrees. So we haven't got that far to go. This is perfect. And I think that's just perfect. Yes. So we're done with the cooking stage. All right, we're back. Now I have my cold saucer here, so we can kind of test our jam. And this cold saucer will help, because it's cold, your jam will start to cool down instantly. And you can can check and see whether you like the consistency. And the way you typically do is you push your finger through it, and if it leaves a clean trail, it's set. Now, no doubt about it, jam will foam. Strawberry jam will foam. So for the clearest jam possible, you want to just skim off the little bit of foam that might collect, usually around the edges of the pot. You can just get rid of some of that. Your jam will be a lot clearer if you do. And won't have those little bubbles on top that you see on jam. And you'll notice right next to me, I have my pot of sterilized hot jars. So our jam is now ready to go into our jars, and it's hot. Now I'm going to fish out those little pieces. You know what? Maybe I'll leave them in there. Those little pieces of lemon zest. I think I might leave them in there. Yeah. Let's leave them in there. But you can remove them if you want. Okay. So now it's time for my other canning equipment. So I need my jar lifter, my jar lifter and my funnel. And I'm going to go ahead and fish out one of my hot jars. Very careful. This is hot. Pour the water back in. And I have my jar sitting on a ring of the lids. Actually, I put some extra lids without the extra rings without the lids down inside the jar, down inside the pot. That way my jars isn't sitting directly on the bottom of the canner. Now, if you don't have extra rings or you don't have one of those baskets that go in a canner when you buy a canner, this is just a regular stock pot, you can put a clean towel at the bottom, but you do want to put something at the bottom. You don't ever want to put your jars directly on the bottom of a pot without some sort of protecting. All right, so time to ladle in the jam. I see a few whole berry pieces that escaped me. Thank you, Jesus. My mother taught me that. She said, whatever you do with something, she said, always give him thanks. Thank you, Jesus. Okay, that's our first jar. And we're going to leave about a 1/2 inch headspace. Ideally, you should leave a 1/4 inch headspace. And with a clean towel, paper towel, you want to wipe the rim of your jars. That's very important because you don't want any jam to be stuck on your jars, and that could cause your seal to fail. And then just take your canning wand and run it around in the jar. Let's just make sure everything is settled and there are no air pockets hanging out in the bottom of your jar. And then you're ready to put your lids on. Clean, sanitized lids. There we are. Just be careful because the jars are hot. And you want to tighten it, but you don't want to over tighten it. Don't ever, don't do that. Just so it's fingertip tight and leave it and you're good. And I want to lower my jars back into my water. This just keeps them hot so they don't start to cool down because, we talked about earlier, hot liquid, hot contents, hot jars, hot water. You don't want your jars to sit here and start to cool down and then go back into this hot water. All right? Okay, so I'm going to work fairly quickly because jam starts to cool down once you take it off the stove. Okay. And it looks like this makes about 4 pints. That's just perfect. Now, let's see here. That looks like it won't quite be 4 pints. This is where we get our spatulas out, girls, and we start scraping off every little bit. Don't waste any. This is good jam. Okay. So, I heard a pop. Don't tell me when you're already popping in the water. If you heard that noise, that's the noise you want to listen for to know that your jars did seal properly. Try to be a little careful doing this because this pot is still pretty warm. Okay, Now this jar is not quite up to the level of the others. Now, what can you do when you run into this? What can you do? What you can do, you can just put this one in the refrigerator and let it cool and then put it in the refrigerator. Or you can open up your other jars and spoon a little bit out and put some in there if that matters to you. Or you can stick it in the pot and process it with the rest. Now keep in mind, it will not hang out on your shelf as long as the ones that came up to full length. But you can still use it. You don't have to toss it out. So I'm just gonna stick it in here with the big guys, with the full guys, and process it with the rest. And we're now ready to put this on the stove. Now I'm gonna put this on the stove. I'm gonna turn the heat up to high. And since my water is already hot, as you can see, it won't take this long. When it comes up to a full boil, leave it at a full boil and set the timer for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, turn the heat off and carefully with your jar lifter, remove your jars out of your canner and put them on a clean towel after the 15 minutes is up. So now I'm gonna head back over to the stove. Okay, y'all, so the pot has come up to the boil and I'm gonna go ahead and set a timer for 10 minutes. And this is what I mean, it has to be at a full boil. Set your timer for 10 minutes, and then after 10 minutes, you know your jam is fully processed and ready to go. Now, you notice I do have, as I always say, whenever you're canning, always wash and sterilize more jars than you think you'll need. The reason behind that is there's nothing worse than having underestimating how many jars you'll need. So always wash and have extra jars. Now I left those extra jars in the pot simply because they will keep my actual jars that I actually have jam in, they'll keep them from tipping around in the pot while it boils. So just leave them in there. It's not going to hurt them. And you can pull them out when you remove your others. You just pull them all out at the same time. It doesn't hurt anything. But you never want to get into the middle of canning and discover you don't have enough jars. And then you have to go wash a jar, and then you have to sterilize that jar. And then sometimes it doesn't sterilize as well as the other. So you always just want to have extra jars. And it's no trouble if you don't use them. It's no big deal. Just take them out, rinse them out, dry them out, and leave them. And it's better to be safe than sorry. So I'm going to let these process for the 10 minutes, and then we will come back. All right. The jam is finished. The timer's gone off. Now, what we want to listen for as we remove these from the pot, you're going to hear the jars pop. And then sometimes they pop right away, sometimes they don't. Let me stand back, I'm getting the full facial, so out she comes. And there's no need to worry, because I used to worry about this. The water on the top of your jars, it evaporates. Okay, that's number 2, 3. And number 4, I'm being quiet because if they pop, I want you to hear them pop, because that's the sound that you know you're going for. Now, if you were canning multiple batches, this water would be perfect to use if you were canning multiple batches of jam. You can continue and use that water again, so you don't have to discard it. But you can see how simple and easy it is to make your own jam. And this is obviously a small batch, but jam is better if it's made in small batches because it's quicker and there's less foaming, especially things like strawberry jam. There's less foaming, and it's a little less stressful if you can make it in a small batch. Now, if you wanted to make a large batch, all you would do is double the quantity. No difference. You would need to add a little bit more time for your when you're cooking your jam, and you need to add a little bit more processing. You need a bigger canner, but your processing time does not change. The processing depends on what you are canning, the size of your jars. So for jams, for pints, or the pint, which is the 16-ounce jars, or the little 8-ounce, which are these, 10 minutes is good. I don't know too many people who can quart size of jars, but if you do, usually going to be about 15 minutes. And your headspace depends on how thick or how loose your contents are. So for jams, it's typically a 1/2 inch to about a 1/4 inch headspace. I left a 1/2 inch because, especially if you think your jam is going to hang out a little longer in your, say you're not going to eat this up in the next 6 months, it's better to leave a 1/4 inch headspace. If you know you'll probably consume this jam within 6 months, then a 1/2 inch headspace is good. Don't go any less than 1/2 inch though, because any less than 1/2 inch, you could have too much air can build up, and that's what you're trying to minimize. You're trying to minimize the amount of air space that can hang out in that jar. Now, yes, we're processing these, and so the air, when the jar pops, that lets you know all of the air has been sucked out of that jar. But you still don't want to leave a wide, just empty space gap in any jar. So pay attention to the headspace. And if you did not want to go through the process as we went through today of water bath canning, you don't want to bother with the canner and all those things. You can just do the same thing that we did earlier, go through the steps of making the jam and sterilize your jars. You still have to sterilize your jars, and then put your jam in, put your lids on and let it cool, and then put it in your refrigerator, and you would just keep that jam in the fridge if you don't want to bother with the whole canning process. If you make it at home yourself, you can feel good about spreading your strawberry jam on a biscuit, or you can put it on your toast. You can even use your homemade strawberry jam as a filling for a cake. So if you have a vanilla cake, you can spread a layer of a little bit of strawberry jam on the inside and pipe on some fresh cream, decorate it with some more fresh cream and some more strawberries or a little bit more jam. The British have a cake made like that. It's called Victoria Sandwich or Victoria Sponge. And that's a delicious cake that uses a homemade strawberry jam as part of the filling. So there are many things you can do with your homemade strawberry jam other than just spreading it on a biscuit or on toast, which is delicious, no doubt about it. But you can use this as a stepping stone. Wherever you see a recipe that calls for some jam, you can reach in your pantry or reach in your cupboard and pull out your own homemade jar of strawberry jam. And I hope that you enjoyed today's video on quick and easy 3-ingredient strawberry jam, and you see how simple and how really easy it is to water bath can your jam if you want to preserve it for longer term storage. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment if there's any particular jams or jellies you would like to see this preserving season. Or if you don't mind sharing with us what kind of jams or jellies will you be doing, will you be preserving this summer. So leave a comment, like and subscribe, and stay tuned to more canning and preserving homemade videos from my channel. So I'll see you guys next time, the good Lord willing. In the meantime, take care, keep on canning and keep on baking, and happy cooking. Take care, y'all. Bye.